One here to my left, Coach Ferris, Coach Dub Ferris. Coach Dub Ferris entered the head coaching profession at Odessa High School, and over his career ended up being a head coach athletic director at Odessa, San Antonio, Marshall, Dickinson, Round Rock, and eventually becoming the AD for Northside Independent School District. In 1982, Coach Ferris received the Houston Post Football Coach of the Year. Between 86 and 88, he served on the board of directors for the Texas High School Coaches Association, and the following 2 years held the same position for the Texas High School Athletic Directors Association. In 1997, he was inducted into the THSCA Hall of Honor, and in 2003, he was inducted into the Texas High School Athletic Directors Association Hall of Honor. Coach Ferris has been inducted into the Dickinson and San Antonio High School Coaches Hall of Honor as well, and in 2003, his name was placed on the stadium at Northside ISD, bearing his name, Dub Ferris Stadium. Please help me welcome Coach Dub Ferris. Coach Mike Robbins, lettered in football for 2 years at Sul Ross State. He was the head football coach at San Antonio Clark for 19 years. He amassed a record of 173, 61, and 5 while making the playoffs 16 out of 19 years. Coach Robbins was inducted into the Greater San Antonio Football Coaches Foundation Hall of Fame in 2006 and inducted into the Texas High School Coaches Association Hall of Honor also in 2006. Round of applause, Coach Mike Robbins. Coach Kif Harden had a 32-year career as a Texas high school coach. 25 of those were as a head football coach with stops at Pearsall, Gatesville, and Rowlett. In 2012, Coach Harden retired from coaching with an overall record of 161, 118, and 1. While at Gatesville, the 2000 team won the 3A Division I state championship with a 15-0 record. Coach Harden was inducted into the Garland Sports Hall of Fame in 2011 and the Gatesville Sports Hall of Fame in 2013. Please help me welcome Coach Kif Harden. We thank you guys for being here with us on this special occasion. This first question, you got the mic right there, Coach Ferris, and then we'll just work the panel as such. The first question is for Coach Ferris. As an athletic director, what did you look for when hiring a new coach? And did you use the same criteria for all sports?
I guess probably how they're going to fit in our district. I was an athletic director at Dickinson, and I was an athletic director at Round Rock, which was a multiple school district and had a couple of schools. But at Northside, we had a lot of high schools. But you had to fit in. You had to understand that the communities were different, but you were going to be treated as much as the same as you could possibly for the needs of your community. But they just had to have reason. It couldn't be selfish. They had to put kids first. I think that honestly, when you look back, the job as athletic director is doing the best for the coaches that are doing the best for the kids. And I saw it a little different probably than most people. I wasn't a guy that had a lot of long meetings, but if somebody at one of the schools had a problem, that was the way I handled it, come to me, and we didn't share the problem with the district. We just tried to shoot that dog when it showed up. But that's kind of the way we did it. We didn't sit around the table and talk about each other's problem.
Thank you, Coach. This next question is for Coach Robbins. Coach Robbins, you spent 19 seasons at San Antonio Clark. What would you consider for being the key in being so successful those 19 years?
Well, actually, it was 20 as a head coach, and then 3 with Coach Honeycutt. But anyway, we had awesome players. When Coach Honeycutt left, told me that he was going to go to Odessa Permian. And I really didn't think anything about it because Coach Honeycutt was always telling him he was going someplace. And so about a week before he was going to leave, he said, "Now, Robbins, you want this job or not?" He said, "I'm going to Odessa Permian. I promise I'm going next week." And so I said, "Well, Coach, I guess between Danny Padron and Mark Reeve and Lloyd Alexander, I'm the oldest. I really am not sure whether I want that job or not. I enjoy being an offensive line coach and officing in your office. And when that phone rang, I'd say, well, I'll take a message, and Coach Honeycutt will get back with you." So anyway, he said, "I'm leaving. You want this job or not?" And I said, "I guess I do." He said, "Do you have a resume?" And I said, "I can't spell resume. What does that mean?" So anyway, he said, he said, "Cheryl will fix you up something." And she did. So anyway, that's kind of the way that thing happened. Coach Honeycutt gave Clark High School a heart. Never been around anybody that works as hard as he does and can deal with kids the way he deals with them. He can say anything to a kid, and they know that he loves them and cares about them, work them really, really hard. You can ask your daddy about that. But he's the greatest coach I've ever been around. And so he gave Clark High School their start, and then he left guys like Danny Padron, that went on to coach at O'Connor High School and Texas Lutheran. Great offensive mind, football junkie. Coaching football was his hobby, and coaching football was his job. So, and Mark Reeve, Mark's in the Texas High School Hall of Honor. Went from Clark High School to head coach at Victoria. From Victoria, he opened up Plano East. Plano East, he retired and went to Alice. Then he went to Cuero as head coach, and he went with Danny as a defensive coordinator at Texas Lutheran. And he's still coaching. He coaches overseas. So, awesome football coach. Then Lloyd Alexander. Lloyd got the coaching job. Coach Ferris hired him up, gave him his first job, and he stayed in Northside the whole time he coached. And then he became the head coach, when we retired. Took Clark High School to the semifinals, had seasons where they, won more games than they ever had in the season. Just an awesome football coach. Really, really smart. Was headed to law school. Ran out of money, and Coach Ferris hired him at Hobby. That's when Marshall had Ferris, and Coach Ferris was the head coach at Marshall. So, we just had a tremendous opportunity. Had a great community over Clark that had a understanding work ethic, and how you do things right. What you do and what not to do. It was important for their kids to have an education and to be worked, and so it was Clark High School was a place that you could not fail, and it's just one of those special places. One of the things that happened to us, and it worked for us at Clark, is during the summers back in those days, you mowed your own field. So actually the first summer that Clark was, we hadn't had a season yet, and my first year to be the head coach, and so this fella called me and wanted to meet with me. Said he had two sons that were coming up in the middle school and going to be in our program. And so anyway, I was out on the field all day long, had my shirt off and probably chewing tobacco, and so I was a little bit late getting up to the office, and he was already in the office. And so he had on a black, you know, like a priest across his neck, and he introduced himself, and I, you know, I'd been out in the sun all day long, and I apologized to him for being late, you know, about 5 or 10 minutes. His name was Joe LaRocca. And he said, Coach, I want to talk to you about the Fellowship of Christian Athletes. And, you know, I thought he was a priest. I mean, my answer would have been yes if he had said jump over the top of the building. That's what I would have done. So anyway, I said, well, I think we have one. And he said, now, Coach, he said, I know you're the head coach, but you can delegate. And I thought that was, you know, good deal. You know, you can delegate. So we got Mark Reeve and Danny Padron to be in charge of our FCA. And for our community, it was awesome. I think the first year we had 2 buses that went to Estes Park where they have the national convention, and 2 bus loads of kids, and it was just a special time for us. And Joe LaRocca was a special person in our community. So,
Thank you, Coach. This next question is for Coach Harden. Coach Harden, what kind of impact did your 2000 state championship have on the Gatesville community?
Well, first of all, it's an honor to be here, and I appreciate the invite. And it had a huge impact. I'll tell you what, it was special, really special time. When we had won in the semifinals, we were going to go. We tried to get to Cowboy Stadium, Texas Stadium, and couldn't do it. And so we ended up over at Birdville Stadium, and that was probably the best thing that happened to us. It was because it was more along the line of what we had played at, and they let our fans on the field. It was more of a atmosphere that we'd been used to. But so we had a tremendous crowd there that traveled up to Fort Worth, and then fortunate enough to win the game, and then when we got home, it was probably 1, 2 o'clock in the morning, and as you drive up into town and up to the stadium, they had the stadium lit up, and the stands were full, and so we had a kind of a little celebration right there, along with a couple of weeks later having a parade. But I think it was very special, not only to the community but the staff, the kids, and it was just an awesome experience. And we were lucky. I feel like if we play that game 10 times, it's probably going to be 50-50 that win. And luckily, the one time we played it, we won it. So anyway, it was pretty big.
Awesome. Thank you, Coach. Coach Ferris, this next question is for you. What were your biggest challenges you confronted while being the athletic director at Northside and adjusting to its rapid growth?
I didn't see it too much as a challenge. We just had a great staff there in the athletic office. Maybe you guys remember some of these people, but we didn't have near as many working in the athletic office at that time. But we had Lisa Dowson worked in there, and she's a brilliant person. Mike Haynes, probably as good as they get. He was the head coach over at Taft. Steve White worked in the athletic office, and just solid people. And then we had a guy that had been a secondary coach with me when I was at Marshall, a guy that's just probably, never got what he deserved in this world for recognition. That's Don Harden. They did name They did name that athletic complex down there after him, but all that's well and good. But, you know, along the way, Don would get to work at 6:30 in the morning, and he'd work until 11 at night. Nobody really gave a shit how hard he worked. That was the bad thing. But as far as the district getting bigger, you know, it's just kind of like painting. You know, you get a bigger brush. It's not that difficult. One thing that we were really involved in was personnel. I hired over 750 coaches in my life, and probably over 400 at Northside. But we tried to hire all the coaches. My idea was that we need to hire them from the athletic office. And the reason why is because I didn't believe principals ought to be involved. I told the principals who we were going to hire because the principals would leave. And they didn't know anything about coaching football. They would say, well, we've got a committee, and this is who we want. Didn't make any difference to me if they had a committee. Those people on that committee were women that taught math and whatever. They didn't know anything about football. But one of the things we did, we hired some damn good football coaches. Some of them are in this room. And they're good football coaches. Brian Dowson, hired him at Marshall when Marshall had gone south. They couldn't beat anybody. They graduated 55 seniors. He took that job after he won a state championship at Roosevelt. They shouldn't have won a state championship at Roosevelt. Hell, Roosevelt never beaten anybody. But they went to Marshall and struggled through that. I think they went the first 7 games before they scored. And the next year, I think they went to the state semifinals. And then we opened up Warren. He was the logical choice. He opened up Warren. He just left there. But David Sanchez is in this room. I think he is. But I hired David Sanchez at Holmes when we needed to hire David Sanchez at Holmes. And David Sanchez was the first Hispanic coach ever on the north side of San Antonio. And I didn't know that. And I think it's a shame. It's not like that anymore. But David was a great coach and great for that community. But hiring people in a big school district, it's not as hard as you think. Supporting them is what you got to do. You got to support them. I'm going to say this so I don't have, while I've got this in my hand, I'm not trying to run this thing out, but I just got to thank those people that hired me to start with. First of all, Steve Graham, I worked for him. I worked for Jerry Blakely. I worked for Joe Means. I worked for Dick Winder. These guys were all great football coaches. Then I had a chance to finish up working for Brian Dowson and coaching with Jeff Robbins and Chris Guidry. Those guys are real coaches, real guys, everyday guys. And those guys are good for kids every day. They're good for the association every day. Association be proud of them. But I'm going to tell you a little story. I was raised pretty damn poor. But the thing that I do remember, and my dad told me this, I'm going to tell you a couple of stories. My dad told me this. If you got your health, you got it all. And as older I've got, the more I realize that. If you got your health, you've got it all. And the other thing is don't make excuses. Stand up for what you believe in. And the most important thing is sacrifice. And life is about sacrifice. And this is one of my favorite stories about sacrifice. This is about a guy who dies and he's trying to get into heaven. He gets up there. St. Peter opens up the door. He said, Roy. He said, yes, sir. He said, getting into heaven is not what you think it is. It's not about race, color, creed. It's not about whether you're Catholic, whether you're Protestant, whether you're Buddhist. He said, well, what is it that gets you into heaven? He said, sacrifice. He said, is there anything, Roy, that you can think about where you've sacrificed for somebody? Where you've actually sacrificed for somebody? He said, yes, sir. He said, I got on a city bus, and it was crowded. It was packed. People were standing, and there was an old man sitting back there, and he had a cane. He was real old. There was 3 thugs standing right over him. And they were just berating this old man. And I just knew they were going to pull him out of that chair. So I physically intervened on his behalf. That was my sacrifice. St. Peter says, Roy, that is great. That's exactly what I'm looking for. When did that happen, Roy? Do you remember? And he said, 5 minutes ago. I'm going to give you one more example of sacrifice, and it was my sacrifice. I was 24 years old, and I was coaching in Clovis with a great guy named Steve Graham. And Steve was my hero when I first started coaching. He was a Marine and a corregidor. One guy on the staff had been a prisoner of war for 18 months in Germany. They had guys in their 40s and there was guys in their 20s. We didn't say much to those guys, you know. But my second year there, I was 24. My wife was pregnant. And we went 7-3 for the second time. They fired Steve, made him athletic director, and hired somebody else. So we all went over to cross the line 4 miles, went into Texas, started coaching at Olton, Texas, Jerry Blakely. And the next year, I got a real break in my life. I got to coach for a great coach, Joe Means, at Odessa High. And he was a legend in West Texas. And of all things, my wife got pregnant again. I was 26. And of all things, Coach Means got fired that year. So there I was, 24. My wife was pregnant, I got fired. 26, wife was pregnant, I got fired. I've never told this story before. But my dad told me, he said, sacrifice for your family first. So I told my wife, I said, you know, every time you get pregnant, we get fired. So we're not going to have sex anymore. Now, guys, I'm going to tell you something. I hadn't had sex since I was 26. Now, when I was in my 30s, it was hard. 40s, still pretty hard. 50s, now I'm 74, so I don't think about it. But I would have to say that's a sacrifice. But anyway, that's pretty much sums it up for me. But the question was about how big school districts were.
Thanks, Coach Ferris. That's good stuff right there. This next question is for Coach Robbins. Okay. This next question is for Coach Robbins. What advice would you give to all the assistant coaches in the audience this afternoon? What's the best advice you could give them?
Keep working. Well, I mean, you know, just whatever group you got, you know, that's what you're in charge of, whether you got the offensive line or the secondary or the linebackers, and take care of them. You know, We got, you know, media with cell phones and whatnot. It's pretty easy to check and see where they are all the time. And, you know, I don't think you can expect your players to, you know, to live up in the weight room 18 hours a day. They got to have a little summer off where they go to swimming pool and flirt with girls or whatever they do. I hope that's what they do. So, but anyway, as an assistant coach, you just be the very best you can be. You know, take care of your guys the best you can, and you know, the ones you're responsible for. Teach those classes. You know, and if you're on a good staff, just stay there. I know places like Northside, you know, where we were for a long time, and Coach Ferris, he always, and Coach Gus, and then George Short, and then Stan Lang now. They do a great job of moving people up, so it's a great school district to be in. And as an assistant coach, I think that if you want to be a head coach, you know, that's not everybody's aspiration. You know, if you want to be a head coach, then I think that you know, you find you a good place and learn all the football you can, and just, you know, continue working, and you'll have that opportunity to move up.
Thank you, Coach. This next question's for Coach Harden. Coach Harden, with all the games on TV, pro, college, you know, there's been a lot of attention drawn about kneeling and or standing for the national anthem. How would you handle this with your team and your coaches? You know, how would you handle that and attack that situation?
I don't know. I didn't have to. I retired in time to not have to worry about that. But you know, I think it goes back to what you believe in your program, what you teach, and what you believe in, and the you know, where you set your priorities, and you know, as many of the coaches have said up here today, you know, you know, coaching football is not about the X's and O's. It's about building young men and trying to teach them, give them a good base, and teach them things about life and that type of thing. And like I said, I feel very fortunate that I'm glad I didn't have to deal with that. I think it's because I don't agree with them, the kneeling, and you know, that's just my opinion. But I think it all goes back to you know, having the priorities in your program and setting those things up, and then I think it takes care of a lot of things. Many times, you know, and I think when you do those kind of things, I was a big believer in as fewer rules as we could possibly have in our program. You know, a few rules, but make them pretty much all inclusive. You know, more of a do-right type deal, and I think that's I think that takes care of a lot of those things. And then, you know, if it happens, you just got to deal with it, I guess. That's
Thanks,
a tough
Coach.
one.
That's a great answer. Thank you. This is the last round of questions here, gentlemen, and then you could also include your final thoughts. This one is for, I don't know if you can top your responses, Coach Ferris, on that last one, man. This is the last one here, the last round. Why did you get into coaching, and outside of a parent, who is your most important mentor?
Why did I get into coaching?
And outside of your parents, who was one of your mentors?
It was strange how I got into coaching, actually. I thought I was going into pre-med. And I changed schools. And when I changed schools, they said, you've got so much science that you've already got it. You're going to be a teacher. Let me back this up just a little bit. Because you don't have very many opportunities to thank people publicly. And a lot of these people are dead. But if it hadn't been for my coaches in junior high and high school, there's no telling what would happen to me. But I went to University of Arkansas, and probably shouldn't have gone there in the first place. And I got hurt. I got shot up. I got injected. I got screwed up. And so after my third semester, it was going downhill for me. And so I told Coach I quit. I couldn't go anymore. That was it. So by the time I got back to Carlsbad, New Mexico, the news had already gotten there that I'd quit. And when I got home, Mom was crying because she didn't want me to quit school. Dad had been a sniper for 39 months. He had seen a lot of bad things. Quitting school wasn't the worst thing he had seen. But Mom said, you need to call Coach Bailey. He wants to talk to you. And so I called him. He said, I heard that you quit. I heard you. He said, what has happened to you? I said, I quit at the University of Arkansas. He said, you know, you didn't quit. You've never quit. You just changed schools. He said, Eastern New Mexico University offered you a scholarship, and they still have it for you because I called that coach. And it was Coach Richardson, Carl Richardson, and he had a coach named B.B. Lees. And I went up there and I played my last 3 years. The thing about those guys, they didn't say, you know, you should have come here and I didn't even visit. I was way too damn good to go to Eastern New Mexico. I didn't even visit. So they never said, you know, you should have come in first place. They never put that in my face. But those are real guys. And Coach Lees has passed away. Coach Richardson is too tough to die. But probably a lot of people in this room have gone through a lot of the same things. Schools like Sul Ross, Eastern New Mexico, have put out a ton of coaches. But you asked me what happened? I was going through spring training before I was ever going to classes at Eastern because of my transcript. There wasn't no email back then. And they wouldn't let me in until I got my transcript. They started spring training. I'm going through spring training, and I'm not even going to class. So when I told the coach, I said, Coach Richardson, I'm not going to class. He said, why not? He said, because my transcript hadn't come in. He ate my ass out. It wouldn't hold shucks. Told me to go to that registrar, and I went over there, and she gave me a schedule. This is your new classes. It'd been going for 6 weeks when I got there. Give you an idea how hard Eastern is. I made a 2.8, and I missed the first 6 weeks of the semester. But when I went over there, to get back to that question, I guess, that's why I'm not an attorney. When I went over there, Miss Wheeler told me how disappointed she was that I'd just been talking to one of her assistants and never looked her up. But she said, you've got all this science and math. Said, you've already got a teaching field. Now you need a minor. So she said, you're going to be a teacher. I said, okay. And she said, you'll probably end up being a coach. I said, okay. That's how I got into coaching. It's kind of a strange deal, but I didn't go to college to be a coach. I didn't really know what the hell I was going to do. But it worked out for me, and nobody ever enjoyed coaching or being around coaches or being around athletes. And the last thing I'll do to close this, when I had a chance to go back to Warren to finish out doing something that I love to do. It was absolutely perfect for me. I wasn't too good at it as a coach. I was pretty damn good at doing the laundry, I think. But I just loved being around the coaches again. And if you get away from coaches, if you get away from the smell of a locker room or getting on that bus, then you will not know how much you missed it. So when you have that opportunity, every day that you coach, you're probably changing somebody's life. That kid I coached at Warren, I thought probably he was in prison by now. He called me the other night, tell me he's doing all right. But in athletics, there's something good about every athlete, or they wouldn't be there. And I have really beaten around that question, but it's something I always wanted to say.
Thanks, Coach. Coach Robbins, same question.
What was the question?
Why did you get into coaching? And outside of your parent, who was your most important mentor?
Well, first of all, I was raised out in a little bitty West Texas town south of Odessa called Crane, and athletics was important in our school. That town revolved around the churches and the school system. So if it was Sunday, everybody was in church. If it was a school function, whether it be basketball season, football season, baseball season, it was loaded up. There was a butt on every number in the gym or at the football field. So naturally, being maybe a little bit above average athlete in all those sports, coaches were important to me all my life. My dad passed away when I was 14, a freshman in high school. He helped start the Little League when we moved to Crane in 1946, when I was 9 months old. Athletics was a big part of his life. The Little League Park there at Crane is named after him. So then my high school coach, Dan Andrade, he's in the Texas Hall of Honor, and I think he was inducted, while I was still coaching. I think about 91 or 92. But anyway, when you threw up a ball in where I was raised in Crane, that was the important stuff. So being an athlete and coaching, I know, are two different things. But naturally, our coaches motivated me. I got a football scholarship to go to Texas Western. They call it UTEP now. And, a guy from Crane looking out the dorm window, the athletic dorm was Minor Hall, and you could see Juarez. You can understand why I didn't last very long. So anyway, they sent me home from Texas Western, and I got a roughnecking scholarship for about 6 months. And I saw a friend of mine at an all-night restaurant, and he talked me into going to Cyril Ross. And so I was probably, my frontal lobe had probably grown together a little bit, where I made better decisions. And I did better at Cyril Ross than I did in El Paso. So, but anyway, coaches were big influences on me. I could name all the guys that I worked for. Blackie Russell over Stockdale, Texas. He was my hero. He was a running back and lived across the alley from us. I lived in an oil camp, and he lived across the alley. And, I'd stand down, all the elementary kids like I was would stand down the end zone. And I'd say, Blackie Russell, tell that other team, watch them warm up. And we'd say, Blackie Russell's going to kill y'all tonight. So, it's important to them at Crane, Texas. But Blackie Russell was my first head coach. I stayed there 2 years and got fired. And then I went to Luling where I had Jackie Probst. Jackie ended up being a superintendent at Terlingua. Then George Crawford came in. George coached at Uvalde with Coach Gus. And then Coach Honeycutt hired me over at Jefferson, and then we went to Clark. So all those guys were tremendous influences on me in coaching.
Thanks, Coach. Coach Harden, some final thoughts?
Well, I think, as far as getting into coaching, I don't think I ever thought about doing anything else. I can't never crossed my mind. My dad was a coach before he went into the Secret Service, and so when I was a little guy, I got to go up to the field house, and I think that was made a big impression on me. As far as influences in the coaching profession, there are too many to count. I played for Carlin Wicker and Gerald Klett and A.J. Lott, and what great men. And then my first job was in Temple with Bob McQueen, and I think on as far as just learning stuff, everybody that I work for or with, I learned something from. Felt like I was always very fortunate. Worked with some of the best guys, best people, best coaches, just great men throughout my whole career. Many of them are here. We've got old Rowlett crew over there, and anything that we accomplished was due to having great assistant coaches and tremendous players. And it was just, we've got even a player over here, Austin Schillings, over there. He played for us there at Rowlett. Herb Kuntz, Kyle Harden, Jerry Watson, and Kevin Brewer. Did I get everybody? All those guys over there, and just a tremendous job. Mike Fetch, yeah. And so, it was all through the whole career was great, and just very fortunate, and wouldn't have picked anything else to do in my life. And so it was a great deal.
Thank you. And just want to thank all three of y'all for being here on this special occasion for the Villaseñor family and spending the 25th with us. Let's give these guys a round of applause, man. Amigos team also.
The Harlingen Downtown District has a bit of everything, my friends, and here's an invitation for you to visit and experience a friendly environment with a taste of local business and a variety of shopping, dining, and entertainment throughout the year. Vintage shops loaded with collectibles from the past, dining that caters to all, boutiques, quilting, salons, live entertainment, and don't forget about market days on the first Saturday of each month on Jackson Street and Art Night the last Friday of the month. It's the Harlingen Downtown District, and the invitation is for you. Shop Downtown Harlingen today.
At Martinez Family Practice, they offer health care and are right now accepting primary care patients. Right now, they are giving athletes the chance to get in their sports physicals at just $20. Angelica Martinez and the Martinez Family Practice in Eagle Pass.